What's up, Central Florida sports fans? Your man, Black Andy Cap's back, talking a little college football. All right, a little college football today, specifically Florida Gators. The Josh Pate football show. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. You should check it out if you're not. The Josh Pate football show. But during the off season, he does kind of a tour of the major programs. He kind of calls it the state of the program, where he goes and talks to coaches of these major programs, and does a sit down, in depth interview. These are usually extended, 45 minutes to an hour. He asks a lot of questions. The good thing about it is he asks pretty much the same questions of all the interviews. So it's really interesting because you can compare what coaches are saying and kind of get a perspective of how coaches are or how coaches compare. And so today we're looking at his interview with Billy Napier. It's about 45 minutes, almost an hour, actually. A pretty in-depth, interesting conversation with Billy. Learned a few things. And so what are my three things that I took away from Josh Pate's State of the Program interview with Billy Napier? All right, number one, these three things. Number one, Billy is committed to his process. He is very committed to how he wants to do this. Listen to what he has to say right here.
I know what it felt like for me. What did 2024 feel like in your seat?
Well, I think it gave me conviction about how we do what we do. I think we really committed to building the program a certain way in the very beginning, kind of stuck to our guns throughout an incredible couple of years. And just to see the character of our team kind of show up, I think the football finally started to look the way we want it to look. But then you've got an obligation to the players that you're leading, and that's really what is consuming you in that moment. And then to see them kind of come alive, that was ultimately, I think the difference is they started to believe they could do it, and then they're a dangerous team, and you're just proud of the players and the approach that they took through it.
All right, so there you hear. Last season to him confirmed what he thought. This is the best way to build my program. Now, he's had a bumpy road. He's been up and down, but he's stuck to his guns. Whether you like Billy or not, he's stuck to his guns. All right, and let's put it this way. Billy isn't out of the woods yet. All right, Coach Napier still has to prove something this season. He ended last season strong, but he has to actually be strong this season. Okay, so he's not out of the woods, but in Billy's mind, it seems, or it appears, it sounds like, let me put it that way, it sounds like that he feels confident that he's figured this out and that we should have higher expectations, because it feels like he has higher expectations. If you look at some of the things he said in the past, in the offseason, talking about his program, the past 3 seasons coming in, he's always been measured in his approach, right? He's always kind of held back. He seems a lot more confident this season coming in than I've ever heard him coming into the season. In this interview, kind of touches on that. You hear him. He speaks. Hey, it gave me that we were doing this right. Now he's like, he wasn't sure, right? And then this is interesting, right? Because what he's admitting is he wasn't sure this was going to be the right way to do it, but he did it. And this is an interesting approach because I feel like, again, whether you like him or not, or whether it works out or not, I should say, I like the guy who's going to stick by his guns, right? This is the guy who said, hey, this is the way I plan to do it. I'm going to do it my way or no way. And I'd rather have that than somebody who's wishy-washy, right? So you compare, like I look at what's happening up at Florida State, right? And Mike Norvell, does he have a solidified plan, or is he kind of bowing to pressure? He went and fired everybody and went and found and hired a whole new staff. I talked about in the previous episode, right? The same staff that took you undefeated, and now you just dumped them all. So I respect Billy for that. Whether or not it's going to work out, that remains to be seen. All right. Thing number two that we want to talk about is it's interesting how Billy talks about using young players, right? What we've noticed this season is that he had fewer defections in the portal. We had a couple, and that's because you had a coaching change, and that always happens. There's always going to, when a coach leaves and goes somewhere else, there's always going to be a couple players who are going to leave with him, right? Because that coach recruited them, has a very strong relationship. That happens. So not surprising. But let's listen to this clip about how he used young players last season.
Yeah, it's a catch-22, right? Like they need the reps, okay, but um, you've got to have an environment where you get them to the show, and I think there's a greater good concept. You're always, as a coach, you're pushing the gas, but then it's like, hey, we got to get them to the show. So the challenge is, like, these young players have to be ready to embrace this role. They're not ready for, and I think you have to commit to that. Good example, we played Miles Graham and Aaron Childs at inside linebacker last year. We played them a possession every half, just as a long-term commitment to their growth. We may need them. You have to keep them engaged. It's going to be important for this offseason, for their development. Just think you see each player a little bit different than you used to see them. I think the portal affects that a little bit. But
all right, that's interesting, right? So Billy said, hey, I put guys in for one series, all right, every game, just to keep them engaged, right? Billy's learning about the portal. And if you watch all three of these Josh Pate State of the Program interviews with Florida State coach Mike Norvell and Mario Cristobal down at Miami, they all talk about the portal and keeping players and how to keep players engaged. Napier seems to be saying, hey, you know what? There's some things I learned, and here's how we have to do this. I think what also helps is the fact that his recruiting classes got better, right? He couldn't do this in the beginning because the talent that he was bringing in wasn't good enough to play for a series in every game, right, as the season went along. So I think what if you're looking at what Billy's saying here in this clip, he's saying, I'm starting to figure out this portal thing, and I think I've got a handle on how to keep my talent in Gainesville, right? How to keep talent on the team and not have to worry so much at the end of the season how I'm going to keep my talent on the roster. You also heard him talk about this at the end of this season, at the end of the last season, the end of 2024. He talked about that, right? He talked about, hey, the first thing we got to do is we got to get back in here, talk to the people who are on our team, and see what it's going to take to keep them on the squad. So it's interesting to listen to Billy talk about how he's using his young talent, how he's keeping them engaged, so that the conversations at the end of seasons aren't about who left, but who's staying. And so at least Billy appears to be getting smarter. He's learning how to work the portal. And this is the third thing, right? Billy is getting smarter, and he's taken on the portal. And again, if you listen to all the other interviews, everybody's talking about the same thing. Again, that's what's great about these interviews is Josh Pate asked some of the same questions. He asked a lot of the questions are the same. So you get everybody's perspective, but Billy seems to be very confident in what he's done here and how he's going to build the team moving forward. So in this third clip, he talks about that. Let's listen to what he's saying.
Ultimately, what I've learned is we need to be more demanding than we've ever been. I think sometimes we're in this portal NIL world, maybe those first couple of years, we're all unsure of how to go about it. I think after year two, I was like, look, I'm not waiting on anybody to tell me how this is going to go. We're going to do it our way. I'm not going to compromise the concept of building a program. I just think there's a place for starting the race somewhere, finish the race somewhere, building a home where you can come back the rest of your life, get the degree, connect with the alumni, learn some life lessons. I think that's still out there. I'm hopeful that with some revenue share and maybe some sanity in the collective, the endorsement world, that we can get back to that and still pay the players like they deserve to be paid. I think that world's out there.
So here it is. This is thing number 3. Our third thing in this episode is Billy has put the portal in a headlock, and it sounds like he knows how he wants to build his program moving forward, right? And if you think about it, it's it's appropriate. All right, he's at the end of his third season. He's 19-19. So basically, he's starting over from the beginning, right? But now he feels confident. Now he says, hey, I'm not going to sit here and figure this out. I'm just going to take control and I'm going to go with it. And this is how I'm going to do it. So he's very strong in his conviction. It seems like he feels like he's got a better handle on how he's going to approach the portal and keeping players on his roster and how to develop that talent, right? That's the other big thing. As a college football coach, you got to develop your talent. And so he seems very committed to building a program the old-fashioned way based on that last clip, right? The portal's a part of it, but he still wants to bring in high school players. He wants to develop these guys over time. He wants guys to get degrees, and he wants guys to be a part of the program and be a part of a traditional type college football legacy of a college football blue blood. Is that possible in this day and age? Well, he did a pretty good job this season. Can he do it again next season? But that, and let's think, look at what happened in Tallahassee. That was a difficult process for Mike Norvell. He seemed to be building, it fell apart. And then we look at what we had last season, right? But we'll look into that more. We're going to go into that interview that Mike Norvell had with Josh Pate. But in this one here, it seems like Billy's saying, hey, I figured out how to build a program. I think I figured out how to win. Well, Billy, now it's time to show and prove, brother. Now it's time to show and prove. And so that's a question I have as we end this podcast, this particular episode of the podcast. What does Billy have to do for you in order for him to keep his job? Because see, I still feel like Billy is on the hot seat. He's still 500 after 3 years, right? He's still on the hot seat. He still has plenty to prove. What does he have to do this season? What's the minimum number of wins? Does he have to get to the SEC championship game? Does he have to make the playoff? Does he have to win the SEC championship in order to keep his job? What do you feel? Let me know in the comments. This is your boy Black Andy Cap. We'll see you again. Peace.